Hi everyone, and welcome to this bonus episode of the Confidence Conversations podcast. So I was really pleased with series 2, and I hope that if you've listened or you're planning on listening that you love it too. There were some great guests and it really was a good series. The conversations felt like they'd really moved on from what does confidence mean to you to how does it show up in your life and in your business or in work environments. Over the 10 episodes, there were so many great discussions, and I know I say that all the time, but I really love them. I think that with all of my guests, we could have just kept on talking. It was so difficult as well to think about how to wrap up this series and to be able to do them justice. So I decided on a different approach for this final episode of Series 2. I asked my guests what question they had for me about confidence. So this episode is called Confidence with a little help from my podcast friends. I'm going to take some time to answer each question that my podcast friends have sent me, and in some you'll hear a clip of the guest as they sent me a voice note with their question, and for others I'm going to read their question from the email. Now, just to bear in mind that I am recording this just before Christmas of 2023, and some of my guests refer to Christmas in their messages. However, what I might say is that while some of the emotions surrounding confidence are heightened over Christmas, there'll be other times of the year where they're heightened for you too. So everything that I'm going to talk about is totally applicable. So don't stop listening if you hear about Christmas and you don't love Christmas, or Christmas is for you, however Christmas works for you. So I want to just take a moment to say thank you to all of my guests. So Emily and Alan from Yellow Tuxedo, Emma from Mosaic Mediation, Ellie from Well Minds Training, Vicky from Vicky Booker Style, Cheryl from SBS Listening, Tina Jennings, our resident Chief Change Officer from Coast and Krogan, I think I've got that right, Phil Salton from Chichester Recruitment, Julian Roberts, who is Julian Roberts Consulting, Emily Perry Coaching, and Kate from a girl called Kate, and that is katecoot.com. And finally, a massive thank you for downloading, for listening, for sharing, for liking, for commenting, and for sending me messages. I was so amazed to have reached 1,000 downloads with this series. And seriously, when I started this podcast back in 2021, I had no expectations of what the downloads would be like. So I'm definitely taking that as a massive win. So thank you so much. It means so much to me that you take the time out to download and listen to these episodes. So before I get going, I just want to say look out for some details on Series 3, which will be coming a bit later in 2024. I've got some stuff planned for that. I'm not going to talk about that now. But yeah, keep your eyes peeled. And of course, you can always subscribe if you so want to. So let's get going then. Here is the new podcast, the wrap up for Series 2, Confidence with a little help from my podcast friends. So let's get going without further ado. Here's the very first question, and it's from Cheryl Andrews, who featured on episode 5 of series 2, and we had a great discussion about overwhelm. So have a listen to the clip, the voice note from Cheryl.
Hi Gail, so my question is, where does confidence come from? And do you have a process, like a series of things that work for you, that when you've lost confidence, that help you to regain it?
Okay, so let's take this question in the two parts. And the first part was, where does confidence come from? So for me, confidence comes from all around us, and I'll explain what I mean by that in a second. But I think it's important to note that confidence means different things to different people in different situations. Now, for those of you that have been listening for a while, you'll be familiar with my iceberg analogy for confidence, where what we see, an outward display of confidence, is the very tip of the iceberg that sits above the water. And that's driven by our actions and our behaviours. Now, underneath the surface, right down at the very bottom of that iceberg, is our upbringing, so where our identity and our values are built. Then we've got our environment and our experience, and these two things are really important, I think, because they drive our confidence. Another part of confidence for me is that actually I believe it's an inner feeling, and I think it comes from a deep-rooted self-belief. And this feeling that you're going to go off and do something and you'll have belief in yourself despite the outcome. I think we've all got that. I think for some of us it's easier to see maybe than others. Some of us can call on it easier, but I think we all have it. Now, research does show that some people do have a larger amount of a gene or a strand of a gene that they think is closely related to confidence. There's not loads of research out there about confidence, but this one particularly said that actually there is this gene. So where maybe you do see somebody that you think is more naturally confident than someone else, it's possible they have this gene. But, and it's a big but here, the most important thing about confidence is it can be built. It is malleable, I hope that's the right word. It's mouldable. You can shape it to what you want it to be. So maybe you might imagine it like a muscle, right? And the more you work on that muscle in the gym, the stronger it becomes. It's that kind of thing. But I think it's impacted by this upbringing, the environment, the experiences, relating back to the iceberg analogy. But then it's also having the courage to go off and do things. Courage is a really important part of confidence. And then practicing that thing. So like anything we want to be good at, we have to practice it. And then for me, it's about being consistent, because that consistency then is what makes the change. So I hope that kind of answers that. Where does confidence come from? In terms of a process, for things that work where maybe you've lost your confidence and how you can regain it, I think that, again, it will be different for everyone, and what works for me might not work for someone else. But some things that I found really useful when my confidence is, say, sometimes I describe it as like a roller coaster, right? So 1 minute you're riding the wave of this roller coaster and you're right at the top and it feels great, and then suddenly you can feel your stomach going as you go down that roller coaster down to the bottom. The things for me that work are the upbringing thing's really interesting, right, in relation to the confidence, because you can't change your upbringing, but you can change how you view situations that happened. But in this case, I think when your confidence is really low, your environment and your experience are really important. In terms of the environment, you can think about, who can I talk to here? What can I change around me, what I'm wearing, what I'm drinking, what I'm eating, all of that kind of stuff, where I'm working even. And then I think you can think about your experience. So what has happened before? What do I know about this experience? What went well? What worked well? What didn't work? What can I change? What don't I want to do again? And I think here you look for hard facts and hard evidence. Don't look for the stuff that you want to be true. Look for the hard fact and the evidence here to support it. So what's the truth? I think for me, the one thing that I've learned over the last few years as well is this idea of self-compassion. And this isn't all about bubbles and candles, bubble baths and candles. This is about true self-compassion and giving myself a break. So when things aren't working properly or my confidence is feeling low, I'm not being too hard on myself. I'm watching the language I use in my mind or in my head, or Betty, who is, some of you will know Betty as my inner critic. So, what is Betty saying to me? And I make sure that I'm not saying something to myself that I wouldn't say to a friend. I think self-compassion is really, really important here. And I think that a lot of us, including me, aren't very good at that all of the time. So yeah, I hope that answers your question, Cheryl. Where does confidence come from? And do you have a process or a series of things that work for you when you've lost confidence that help you to gain it? That's the first question done. The next question came from Phil Salton from Chichester Recruitment, and he featured on episode 7, and we talked a lot about confidence in interviews. And his question he sent to me on email, and I love this question, it's such a good one. He asked me, what's more important when running your own business, confidence or courage? I think the answer's quite short here, Phil. But that said, I think it's a really great question. It's so important because the two are so intrinsically linked to each other for me. But I do believe that you can't get to confidence without courage. So let me explain a little bit more about what I mean. So I think if we waited to be confident to go off and do something, whatever that is in our business, whether that's to go to networking, whether that's to speak out, whether it's to post on social, I don't know, whether it's to engage with somebody about something, to contribute to anything we want to do, I think that if we waited until we were confident with that, we'd never go off and we'd never do stuff. We'd probably just stay in our houses. We probably actually wouldn't leave the house. We just wouldn't get stuff done. So I think that you need a shot of courage to go off and do things. And I think it's that bit of courage to go off and do those things that then builds your confidence. A bit of a catch-22, right? You need the courage to go off and do the thing. When you've done it, your confidence feels high because you feel good about it. So you've got a bit of dopamine going on there. Yeah, it's fulfilling everything that you need from that. And then you've got the confidence to then go off and do it again. Yes, okay, so you might feel nervous before you go off to that. I don't know, I'm going to use networking because I know Phil's always out there networking, as am I, because that's where I see him. But you always have that. I definitely have that feeling when I go to networking. If he's going to be there, where do I park? You know, all of those kind of things. But you just need that courage to go off and do it. And then that courage builds your confidence, which builds this feeling of mastery, like you've got this, and then you'll feel more comfortable. Now, I know that Phil loves my big pants analogy, so I do want to address that here because I think this is exactly what the big pants analogy does here, is that it gives you that bit of courage because when you pull up your big pants, you stand taller, yeah? You puff your chest out and you kind of go, I've got this. Just like a superhero pulls on a cape, you know, they change, your whole demeanour changes. And those big pants, or that superhero cape, however you want to refer to it, makes you stand taller and you feel like you can conquer it, whatever that it is. So I hope that answers your question, Phil. I really believe that you cannot get to confidence without courage. Okay, so the next question is from the fabulous Alan Braithwaite from Yellow Tuxedo on behalf of him and Emily. Now, Emily and Alan were on episode 1 of the series 2, and we talked a lot about online presence and confidence. And his question comes in the form of a voice note. So here's the question, and then I'll come back with my answer.
Hey Gail, it is Alan here off of Yellow Tuxedo. Only me, as Emily is currently doing something Christmassy. She's eating mince pies. So we're thinking about, first of all, thank you for having us on your podcast. We blimmin' love you to bits, and it was always epic chatting. But it got me thinking about the whole confidence and courageous thing as we fast track into the Christmas period. And my big question is, in the period of the year when, let's be honest, it can be thrown up in the air with weather and other priorities and, clients kind of easing up because they're on Christmas and you're needing to drink perhaps and all these other things. How do you maintain consistency? How do you keep your confidence going when, it could be challenging on the best of days? And how do you stay courageous as you're doing all of those things, for your own benefit and the growth of your business? That's what I'd like to know. And yeah, just once again, you are fabulous. Thank you so much.
Alan, thank you. That's a really great question in the run-up to Christmas, but also I think in the run-up to anything where we might feel a little bit overwhelmed, which is probably what you described a little bit there, actually. So I've got a few bullet points, a few things here. The first thing I might say is for you to check in with your negative self-talk. So what are you saying to yourself about this time of year? Is it positive or is it negative? And then think about what would you say to a friend? Because I bet some of the stuff you're telling yourself about what you've got to do this, got to get that done, got to get the other done, got to do this, must be there, must be here. And actually, what would you be saying to a friend? You'd probably be saying, mate, chill out. Definitely. You can't possibly do all of that. The next thing I'd say is control the controllables here. Don't set yourself up to fail. Don't agree to everything. You can't do everything. And don't forget, there is no such thing as perfect. So this pressure that we have, just go with the flow and control what's within your control right now. And don't focus on those things that you can't control. One of the things that's worked for me this year is at the beginning of December, I decided to do a list of stuff that I had to do without question before Christmas. And for once it actually worked. There were only 5 things on that list. Some of them were reasonable size as well. And I've actually done them. Go me. But the result of this is that I feel confident now going into Christmas that those things are ticked off. I can put my out of office on with less of a worry that I didn't do those, I suppose. But also it did help to keep me focused and keep me consistent in that workspace when everything's going on around you. There's all talk of parties, of going out, of excitement, of Secret Santa, all of that. It helped to keep me focused and consistent doing what I do best. I think there's also a piece here around accepting that it might be quieter on the business front and don't be too hard on yourself. We have a saying in our house of, don't force it. You don't, give yourself a break. Don't be too hard on yourself. I don't know what else to say there. I think that's the message. I definitely have all these plans for when it goes a bit quieter, and I have these big ideas of all these things I can do, but then often I don't get round to them. And I think that this is, in December it'll be quiet, I'll be able to do this. Same applies to August, right, as well. I know a lot of you will have kids, so this probably doesn't apply to you, but on a business front, August is quieter. And actually what happens is I get to that point and I'm exhausted. My brain capacity, I just can't take any more. So I do have to stop and have a break. And I find then that break helps me to rest, reset, and the ideas then flow a little bit more freely. And remember as well, most people are on the wind down with parties, catch-ups, holidays, visiting family, friends, whatever that looks like for them. All of these things as well impact your confidence, and they make you feel like you've not got any confidence or any courage to do anything. But we have to take breaks. You're no good to you, your family, or your clients, or your business if you're running on empty. Your phone doesn't work, does it, when it goes into the red, or it doesn't work very well? Neither do you. I think probably the biggest message here that I probably could have summed up quicker is have some self-compassion. And this self-compassion is not about bubble baths and candles. This is about setting boundaries, knowing for you what's okay and what's not okay. And we've already said you can't do everything, and that's okay, of course. But what are your boundaries, and how will you know, and how will others know when they've been impacted? Remember, it's as courageous to say no as it is to say yes. If you're interested in this idea of self-compassion, the work of Dr. Kristen Neff is amazing, and she talks a lot about this idea of fierce and tender self-compassion and how the two come together to help us to build up this idea of self-compassion. I really like it. You can find more info at selfcompassion.org. Thanks, Alan. That was a great question, and I hope I've managed to answer it, and I hope that you guys will treat yourself to a little bit of self-compassion this Christmas, so that when January comes you can hit the ground running and be as fabulous as you always are at Yellow Tuxedo. On to the next question, which was from Julian Roberts from Julian Roberts Consulting, and he was on episode 8, and we had a great conversation about resilience and confidence and the links that they both have with each other. Julian's question was, how can visualization impact my mindset and increase my confidence? Great question. Thank you, Julian. I have a couple of views on visualization, actually, and often I will use this in coaching with clients, where thinking about visualizing the outcome or small steps along the way is another great way to do it that can keep your confidence levels high. So I'm sure most of you will have seen that, we don't need to climb the whole ladder. We just need to take one step at a time. We break it down into small chunks. And what will it feel like or look like when I've reached that first step, then that second step, then that third step, fourth step, fifth step, until I'm at the top of the ladder? I think visualizing the outcome is a really different way of thinking, and for me, in terms of mindset, it feels like it's more of a growth mindset. You're looking further down the path rather than a fixed mindset, which might sort of say, well, now I'm going to get to the first step and that'll be that done. I think it gives that growth mindset of I am going to achieve it, I'm going to take these steps to do it, and I can visualize myself at the top. I think lots of professional athletes do this. Julian, you'll surely know more about this than me, because I know you, on your own podcast, you have talked a lot with athletes that have run ultra marathons and all sorts of things. But I think if you think about footballers, rugby players, they all visualise the football hitting the back of the net, the rugby ball going between the posts, getting to the finish line first, jumping the highest. You get the picture, the visualisation of what that looks like. And I think in that they also visualise what it looks like when they've done it and how it will feel. So, some of this as well comes back to the practice element of we practice and we practice and we practice. And I remember before the World Cup, the Spanish football team practiced their penalties. And also the one that always springs to mind in visualisation for me is Jonny Wilkinson. And I'm hoping most of my listeners know who I'm talking about. He was the World Cup winning rugby player. And you can see him visualising kicking the rugby ball. He looks down at the ball, he looks up to the post, down to the ball, up to the post. He does that little dance, or he did that little dance when he was playing. So I think when you're facing something that you maybe fear or feels difficult, take a moment and close your eyes. Visualise that success. What does this look like? What kind of things are you doing? Who are the people in your life? How will they make you feel? The people that you really want around you in your environment. How does it feel as well? How is it going to look like when it's finished? And I think the visualisation is clearly linked then, for me, with that feeling of, I've mastered this. I've done this, and that visualization might feel quite scary, and that's okay. But the feeling of what does this look like when I've done it, I think outwins anything else that you might be feeling. So I think visualization is a great one. Close your eyes. What does this look like when I've done it? Thanks, Julian. Great question. On to the next question then, and this one is from Kate Coote, from katecoot.com, our famous copywriter extraordinaire who does killer copy. And Kate was on episode 10, and we talked a lot about being authentically you online, and how you can be you all the way through all of your social, all of your copy, your website, and everything involved in that. Kate's email question said, I'm going to keep my question simple. What do you think is the biggest threat or barrier to confidence? What a great question. And I think the simple answer to that, Kate, is, well, the biggest threat or barrier to confidence is you. And I don't mean you, I mean you generally. As in, you are the only person that will hold yourself back from being more confident. And the reason we do that is because we talk ourselves out of things. So we say, I just need more confidence, or I'm not confident in that, or I couldn't possibly do that. Networking, oh my God, no, you'll never get me there. Oh no, I can't post on social because what if nobody likes it? You'll do all of these what ifs. And I think some of this is linked to fear, right? Fear of judgment, fear of success, fear of it not going well, fear of getting it wrong, fear. And if you haven't read the book, Feel the Fear and Do It Anyway, then I'd really recommend that you go and read that. Certainly she talks about the power of vocabulary. She talks about levels of fear. I think that's really interesting. I think the question that I might challenge you with here is, what do you need to stop doing to help build, change, or enrich your confidence? So what are you doing that's holding you back from being more confident? And remember, in one of the other questions, we talked about this idea of you can't get to confidence without courage. So when you're saying to yourself, oh, I just wish I was more confident, or I need more confidence, actually, is that what you need? Or do you need the courage to just go off and do that thing that you've been putting off? And that's actually your biggest barrier. So definitely my question here, back to, in response to Kate's question, would be, what do you need to stop doing? Because if you're the biggest threat to your own confidence, what do you need to stop doing? So the last and final question comes from Vicky Booker. Vicky's a style and personal brand coach, and she was episode 4 of the last series, and we obviously talked about personal brand and style and confidence. And her question is in the form of a voice note.
Hello, lovely Gail. Thank you for asking us to ask you a question about confidence in relation to maybe our businesses or some challenges we face. My question is about How do you stay confident in your own right, whether that's as an individual in your everyday life or maybe as a business owner, when you've got a bit of comparisonitis, that's the word, going on? I've noticed that a lot of my clients have been doing this recently. Why does my friend look great in this and I don't? She looks better in this than me. And I'm just thinking, yeah, it's really tempting to compare yourself against others and think you're not doing so great. So any tips you have in your infinite wisdom about being confident in your own right and avoiding those comparisons would be fab. Have a great Christmas.
Good old comparisonitis. It's a tough one, isn't it? And it's so easy to get into the trap, and I would say we're probably all guilty of it. I certainly know I am. It's really tempting to compare ourselves to others. Now, of course, there is the famous quote from Theodore Roosevelt who said, "Comparison is the thief of joy," and how so very right she was. So my latest blog on my website is all about comparisonitis. So if you want to read more, then go ahead and check that out. It's on the blog page and it's the latest one. But the 4 tips that I talk about are, and I might challenge you to think about how you might do this. Ask yourself, how does comparing yourself to others make you feel? And how is that helping you? The answer is it probably isn't. So think about then, what do you love about yourself and what makes you uniquely you? They're 2 really tough questions, but really stop and focus the energy on you and think about you rather than someone else for a change, because there'll definitely be something if you think deep, hard, and you're honest with yourself. The second thing is, rather than comparing, how can you use someone else as a bit of a source of inspiration? So in Vicky's question, she talked about her clients who are going, well, that outfit looks great on her, why doesn't it on me or him? So that outfit that you think looks better on someone else, what can you do to make it great for you? Is there different accessories? Is there a different way to wear it? Is it in a different colour? Why do you want to wear the same as someone else? Think about what your strengths are as well, and how can they help you so you compare less and appreciate you more. And then the final thing is about focusing on you. I've already alluded to this really, is to say focus on you rather than what others have got or what you think they have got. That's the important word there, think. Your time and energy is much better spent thinking positively about yourself. Easier said than done, I know, and I do get that. But I'd say if you have to compare yourself to the yesterday you, the last week you, the last year you. Don't waste your energy thinking about others, because you are the most important person here. But to just address the Christmas season or any other party season really, I mean, there are some things that you can do around, you know, I want to say stay off social media, but I know that I can't do that, or I choose not to do that, shall we say, or limit your time on it. So, you know, maybe everyone's all glammed up, they're going out every night, they seem to be the most popular person. Just remember, it's the show reel of life, and they are showing you what they want you to see. And often, it's not very often you see them at the end of the night, although I think there are a few rogue pictures of me flying around at the end of a few Christmas parties in years gone by. We'll say no more about those. I'd also say that there's so much noise at Christmas time about having the perfect Christmas, and that only results in the pressure that we put on ourselves. There's no such thing as perfect. Yeah, and what is perfect? What does that even mean? Again, it's different for everyone, isn't it? And why do you want to be like everyone else anyway? And also a quick reminder that, you know, Christmas isn't the most wonderful time of the year for everyone. People have different views on Christmas. And of course, comparisonitis is linked to confidence, because we make assumptions that everyone is doing better. They are busier than you. They have more than you. They're smarter. They're better looking. They're thinner. They're fatter. Whatever that is, we perceive that it's better than us. And it's just not true. So before you go off looking for evidence to prove that they are better, I'd challenge you to look a bit closer to home and to think about some of those things that you can do to focus on you and not to comparisonitis yourself with someone else. So that truly does bring this series of the Confidence Conversations podcast to a close with this bonus episode. And I just want to say thank you so much to everybody that sent in those questions. While some of those were quite challenged to think of the answers, but I hope that if you submitted a question, you got the answer you were looking for. And if you're listening, there's some tips and tricks and things there that can really help you with your confidence and whatever that is that you are thinking you'd like to change or enrich or do differently. So that's the end of series 2 with a little help from my podcast friends. Thank you for listening. And remember, if this is the first time you've listened, you can go back and listen to all the episodes. And we're on Apple, Spotify and Google. You can also find a link to the podcast on my website, which is enrichmentcoaching.co.uk. And don't forget, if you listen to an episode and you love the sound of the guest, please go and follow them on their social as well. Find out what they're talking about. These guys have given up their time and I'm so grateful because the conversations have been amazing and I have loved them. So thank you if you have listened, you've downloaded, you've shared, you've liked, you've messaged me. I'm so grateful for every single one of you. So this is me, Gail from Enrichment Coaching, signing off the Confidence Conversations podcast for Series 2.